Did the hospital send a confirmation for my surgery? I asked quietly, trying to keep my voice steady as we sat around the polished oak table. My mom didn't even look up from serving mashed potatoes. They did, she said casually. But we had to use that money for your brother's birthday. He only turns 21 once, you know. My fork stopped midair. You used my surgery money? Dad chimed in, chuckling. You'll be fine, Evelyn. You always make such a big deal out of everything. Your brother barely gets any attention. Let him have his moment. Across the table, Ethan grinned smugly, flashing the new designer watch gleaming on his wrist. Thanks for funding my birthday, sis, he said, half joking but fully proud. The room went silent except for the faint clinking of cutlery. I placed my fork down carefully, my heart thudding like thunder under the calm surface of my voice. So, I said softly, I guess you still don't know who really needs the surgery. Dad frowned. What's that supposed to mean? Mom's smile faltered. Evelyn, stop being dramatic. I looked at each of them slowly, one by one. My brother's arrogant smirk, my father's dismissive eyes, my mother's cold indifference, and then I smiled. Don't worry, I said. You'll find out soon enough. For the first time in years, they looked uneasy. That night, as I packed a single suitcase, I decided they wouldn't get another chance to spend my life like it was disposable. And the real surgery? It wasn't for my body anymore, it was for my freedom. The next morning, I drove to the hospital myself, the same one my parents were supposed to handle everything with. The receptionist, a kind woman named Hannah, looked up my file. Your surgery was fully approved, Ms. Reeves, she said. But your guardian canceled it 2 weeks ago. Claimed it wasn't medically necessary. I froze. Guardian? I was 24. They didn't have that power anymore. Hannah frowned at her screen. Wait, someone submitted an old authorization form under your father's name. That's highly irregular. I exhaled slowly. Can I get a copy of that form? Within minutes, I was holding the evidence, my father's signature, forged beside mine. The ink was shaky, but not enough to draw suspicion. My hands trembled, but my voice was steady when I said, "Thank you." Outside in the parking lot, the sun felt different, not warm, but clarifying. I drove straight to my lawyer's office. Mr. Lane had handled my insurance paperwork before. When he saw the document, his expression darkened. This is fraud, Evelyn. Not just morally wrong, legally punishable. Good, I said quietly. Then we'll handle it legally. That evening, I emailed my parents the scanned copy of the forged signature, attaching the message. I think you should know what the hospital found today. I'll let you decide whether you want to fix it yourselves or let someone else fix it for you. By midnight, my phone buzzed nonstop. Missed calls. Apologies. Excuses. I didn't answer a single one. The real surgery was scheduled for next week, funded by a private foundation that didn't steal from me. And soon, I'd show my family what healing really looked like. A week after my surgery, I received a message in our family group chat, the same one they used to brag about Ethan's parties. Mom, Sunday dinner at 7. Family only. Let's talk. I stared at it for a long moment. Maybe they thought a single dinner could undo years of betrayal. Still, curiosity won. I showed up. The house was spotless, candles lit, like they were preparing for a guest who mattered. Dad smiled stiffly. Evelyn, you look good. Recovery suits you, Mom added, her voice too sweet to be real. Ethan, sitting across the table, avoided my eyes. Probably embarrassed. Probably still trying to figure out how I'd paid for everything on my own. Dinner started quiet, until Dad cleared his throat. Your mother and I made a mistake. We thought we were doing what was best for everyone. You used my medical fund for a birthday watch, I said calmly. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. Mom shifted uncomfortably. We were under pressure. Ethan needed validation. I interrupted. I hope that watch keeps his heart ticking, because mine almost didn't. Ethan looked up sharply. Eve, come on. I leaned back, folding my hands. I didn't come here for an apology. I came here to return something. I placed a sealed envelope on the table. Their eyes followed it nervously. What's that? Dad asked. The beginning of accountability, I said softly. They didn't know yet inside were legal notices. Fraud investigation. Forgery report. Hospital correspondence. And a single note that read, "This is what healing costs when you try to steal it." 3 days later, I was sitting in my office, the same firm where I'd built my career in medical administration, when my assistant buzzed in. "Evelyn, your parents are here. They said it's urgent." I smiled faintly. Perfect timing. They entered, faces pale, eyes darting around the marble-floored room like they didn't belong there. "Eve," Dad began, "the hospital called. They said someone reported us for document tampering." "You wouldn't." I leaned back in my chair. "I didn't report you. The system did. The hospital's audit flagged the forgery automatically." Mom's voice cracked. "They said we could face charges." "How could you do this to your family?" "Family?" I repeated softly. "You used that word while spending my surgery fund on a watch. You risked my life for a party." Ethan muttered, "It was just money, Eve." I stood, sliding a stack of documents across the table, certified copies from the hospital, the insurance company, and my lawyer. "This is a record of everything you signed in my name. It's also what I sent to the board this morning. They'll decide whether you keep your positions in the hospital trust." Dad's face drained of color. "You wouldn't ruin your own family for this." I looked at him calmly. "You already did. I'm just finishing what you started." The door opened then. My company's legal counsel entered with a folder. "Ms. Reeves, the press statement's ready for your approval." My mother's lips parted in shock. "Press?" I smiled gently. "Transparency, Mom. You taught me to tell the truth, when it's convenient. I'm just doing it when it matters." 2 days later, the conference room was packed, journalists, hospital representatives, and investors. My parents sat stiffly in the second row, their expressions carved in panic. Ethan wasn't there. Apparently, he couldn't handle the stress. The microphones flashed as I stepped onto the podium. "Good morning. I'm Evelyn Reeves, Head of Operations for the Helios Medical Foundation. Today, I want to address a matter not of money, but of ethics." The cameras clicked. I could feel my parents' eyes burning into my back. "Last month," I continued, "someone canceled a life-saving surgery using falsified documents and redirected the patient's funds for personal use. That patient was me." A gasp rippled through the audience. I let the silence linger before continuing. "The hospital system's digital audit caught the forgery, proving that privilege without accountability breeds corruption, even within families." I paused, then turned slightly, meeting my father's eyes. "This isn't about vengeance. It's about the truth. Because silence only protects the guilty." The reporters exploded with questions. I answered calmly, naming no names, just showing the documents, the timeline, the signatures. The evidence spoke louder than accusation ever could. Afterward, as I stepped down, I caught my father's whisper to my mother. "She destroyed us." I turned back and said quietly, "No, Dad." I freed myself. The story went viral overnight. Commentators praised my composure, my courage. But I didn't care about headlines. I cared that, for once, the narrative belonged to me. And deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. Because the world now saw what kind of people they were and what kind of woman I had become. By Monday morning, the fallout had begun. The hospital board called an emergency session. My parents' names, once symbols of community respect, were now whispered with shame. News outlets replayed my statement, dissecting every sentence. Social media flooded with support. "Stay strong, Evelyn. She's what integrity looks like." But the part that hit hardest came from the hospital director himself. He called me into his office, eyes full of quiet admiration. "Evelyn," he said, "what you did took courage. We're launching a full ethics review, and we'd like you to lead it." For a moment, I couldn't speak. I'd spent years feeling invisible in my family's shadow, and now the very institution they'd used to control me was placing its trust in me. I accepted. That afternoon, I received a message from Ethan. "Ethan, Mom's crying nonstop. Dad won't leave his office. Are you happy now?" I stared at the screen before replying. "Me? I didn't do this to make them suffer. I did it so they'd finally understand suffering. He didn't respond. Later, I received a formal letter, my father's resignation from the board. The same man who once told me, "You're not strong enough for leadership," had been forced to step down under my signature. That night, I sat in my apartment, the same one they'd mocked as temporary. My surgical scar still ached faintly, a reminder of what almost didn't heal. Some wounds fade with time. Others, you learn to wear like armor. And mine? Mine gleamed, proof that betrayal doesn't break you. It builds the version of you they never thought you'd become. 2 weeks later, I got an unexpected call from my mother. Her voice was quiet, stripped of the usual authority. "Evelyn, can we have dinner?" "Just the family." I hesitated, but agreed. There was no anger left, just curiosity. The restaurant they chose was the same one where we'd celebrated my brother's every promotion. When I arrived, the air felt heavy. My father was already seated, staring into his untouched glass of water. My mother looked older, not physically, but in spirit. "Evelyn," she started softly, "we didn't realize how much we'd hurt you." I met her eyes.
"You realized?"
"You just didn't care until the world did." Dad flinched. "We were under pressure. I made bad choices." "No," I said calmly. "You made comfortable ones. At my expense." The waiter brought our food, but no one touched it. Silence filled the space between us, the kind that comes when truth replaces excuses. After a long pause, my father sighed. "We've lost everything: reputation, board seats, respect. But you gained all of it." I folded my hands. "I didn't want you to lose. I just wanted to stop losing myself." For the first time, my mother's eyes welled with tears. "You've become someone stronger than we ever imagined." I smiled faintly. "You mean stronger than you ever allowed me to be."
The check arrived.
My father reached for it, but I stopped him. "Don't worry. I've got it." It wasn't pride. It was closure. For years, they'd paid to control me. Tonight, I paid to end it. A month later, the hospital's annual gala was held, the same kind of glittering event my parents once ruled. This time, I stood at the podium, not as a patient or a daughter, but as the newly appointed director of medical ethics and patient advocacy. Flashbulbs popped. The same reporters who'd once chased my father now turned their cameras toward me. My speech was short, deliberate. "Integrity," I said, "isn't inherited. It's proven when doing the right thing costs you everything." Applause filled the hall. I caught sight of my parents near the back, standing, clapping slowly. My mother's eyes glistened with something between pride and regret. My father looked smaller, but finally human. After the event, I stepped outside into the cool night air. The city lights reflected off the hospital windows like constellations, distant but clear. Julian, the hospital director who had believed in me from the start, joined me quietly. "You did it, Evelyn," he said softly. "You turned pain into purpose." I smiled faintly. It was never about revenge. It was about rewriting the ending. He nodded. "And you did, beautifully." Weeks later, I received a handwritten letter. It was from my father. No excuses this time, just 7 words. "You were always the strong one, Evelyn." I placed it in my desk drawer, beside my old surgical bracelet, the one that once labeled me dependent. Now I was anything but, because sometimes poetic justice isn't loud. It's quiet. It's calm. It's a woman standing on her own 2 feet, while the world finally watches her rise.